2 hours before my wedding, my mother-in-law cornered me in the groomsman's room and locked the door. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You'll never be part of this family. You're a phase. She'll outgrow you." Then she smiled, like she'd already won. I stood there in my tux, jaw clenched, heart pounding, realizing she really believed she could break me. My hands were shaking, but I kept them still at my sides. The room felt smaller, suddenly, like the walls were closing in. Outside, I could hear laughter and music. Inside, there was just her cold stare and my racing heartbeat. She walked out proud, heels clicking on the marble floor. But I didn't walk away defeated. Something inside me shifted right then. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was clarity. For the first time, I saw her completely, and I knew what I had to do. That moment changed everything. She thought she'd crush me. Instead, she just made the biggest mistake of her life. My name's Adam. I'm 32 years old. I grew up in a modest town where hard work mattered more than fancy clothes or big words. I fell for a woman way out of my league, Madeline. She was smart, funny, confident. She could walk into any room and own it without trying. She challenged everyone around her, including her own family. That's what I loved most about her. But the moment I met her mother, Evelyn, I knew I wasn't just dating Madeline. I was entering a battlefield I didn't understand yet. Evelyn had this way of looking at you. Through you, really. Like you were already disappointing her. She'd smile, but her eyes stayed cold. Everything about her screamed old money. The designer clothes, the perfect posture, the way she never raised her voice, but somehow made you feel small anyway. From day one, she made it clear I didn't belong. I was blue-collar. I worked with my hands. I didn't have a trust fund or a fancy degree. To her, I was temporary. A mistake Madeline would eventually correct. 6 months into dating Madeline, I got invited to dinner at their house. The place looked like something from a magazine: marble floors, chandeliers, paintings that probably cost more than my car. I sat down at this massive dining table, trying not to look nervous. Evelyn watched me the whole time, studying my every move like I was some science project. When the steak came out, I picked up my knife. That's when she smirked. "Do you even know how to use that?" she asked. Everyone at the table laughed awkwardly. Madeline's face went red. Her father coughed into his napkin. Even the staff looked uncomfortable. I smiled back at Evelyn, keeping my voice steady. "I manage," I said. Inside, I was boiling. My jaw hurt from clenching it so hard. But I didn't snap. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I just cut my steak slowly, carefully, and ate in silence. That night, I realized something important. She wanted me to lose control. She wanted me to prove I didn't belong. So I decided right then I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. A few months later, Evelyn offered to pay for our honeymoon. I should have been grateful, but nothing with her came free. She smiled sweetly across the table. Of course, Madeline would need to sign a prenup first, just to protect the family, you understand. It wasn't about money. It was about control. A leash. Madeline looked at me, worried I'd be insulted. But I surprised everyone. I agreed calmly. Then, I added my own condition. If you interfere in our marriage in any way, the prenup becomes void. All terms canceled. I watched Evelyn's smile tighten. She hadn't expected that. For a moment, she studied me like she was recalculating something. She signed it anyway. But I noticed her hand shook slightly as she wrote her name. That's when I realized. She expected me to be easy to handle. She thought I'd just roll over and take whatever she dished out. The fact that I'd actually read the prenup and added my own terms? That rattled her. Her smile faded just a bit, and I tucked that reaction away in my memory. When I planned my proposal to Madeline, I told only a few people. One of them was her sister, who I thought I could trust. Big mistake. Within days, Evelyn knew everything: the date, the location, all of it. Suddenly, the family announced they'd booked a vacation the exact same weekend. To a place they'd been talking about for months, apparently. What a coincidence. Madeline was torn. "Maybe we should go with them," she said, looking guilty. Evelyn played innocent when Madeline asked her about it. Why didn't Adam include us in his plans? She said, with fake hurt in her voice. Family should be together for these moments. Madeline started doubting me. Started wondering if maybe I was trying to separate her from her family. I could see the confusion in her eyes, the questions forming. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just waited. Because I knew something about Evelyn that Madeline didn't yet. She always overplayed her hand. She couldn't help herself. One night, I was getting water from the kitchen in their house. I heard Evelyn's voice from the study. She was on speakerphone, talking to someone. He's just not one of us, she said, laughing. This won't last. Give it a year, maybe two. She'll see what I see. I stood frozen in the hallway, glass in my hand. He's got nothing to offer her, Evelyn continued. No connections, no future. He'll never fit in. Mark my words, this marriage is a mistake. She didn't know I was there. Didn't know I was listening to every word. I didn't record it. I didn't burst in. I didn't say a single word. I just stood there in the dark hallway, letting those words sink deep into my bones, letting them fuel something growing inside me. She thought I wasn't listening. She thought I didn't matter enough to notice. That was her second mistake. I was always listening, always watching, always learning. At our rehearsal dinner, Evelyn stood up to make a toast. Everyone went quiet, glasses raised. She talked about love being romantic and beautiful. Then she paused, looked at me, and added, "But romance is often temporary. What matters is foundation, stability, being with your own kind." The room went silent. A few people coughed. Madeline's face went white, then red. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "How dare you?" she whispered, then walked out. I followed her outside. She was crying, shaking with anger and humiliation. I wrapped my arms around her, but I didn't tell her it was okay. I didn't make excuses for her mother. I let her sit with the pain. I needed her to feel what I'd been feeling for months. I needed her to start seeing the truth on her own. Because if I pushed too hard, Evelyn would just play the victim and Madeline would defend her. Sometimes silence teaches better than words. Wedding day arrived. I was in the groomsman's room, half-dressed, adjusting my tie in the mirror. My hands were shaking slightly. Wedding nerves, I thought. Then Evelyn walked in. She closed the door behind her. I heard the lock click. She stood there, perfectly composed in her elegant dress, and delivered her ultimatum. "Call it off now, Adam. Walk away, or I will make your life a living hell. I will ruin you. I have the power, the connections, the money. You have nothing." She stepped closer. "You'll never be part of this family. You're beneath us. Madeline will realize that eventually. Save yourself the embarrassment." I looked at her for a long moment. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. "Thanks for being honest," I said quietly. She smiled, thinking she'd won, thinking I was defeated. She left without another word, heels clicking confidently down the hall. That was the moment everything crystallized for me. I wasn't going to fight her with anger or confrontation. I was going to play the long game, and I was going to win. Something snapped in me that day, not in a rage kind of way, but in a surgical kind of way. I realized I'd been approaching this all wrong. You can't fight people like Evelyn head-on. They're too practiced at it. They've spent their whole lives winning these battles. They have all the weapons, money, influence, social power. But they have weaknesses too. Pride, overconfidence, the absolute certainty that people like me don't matter. I decided right then I would let her believe she tamed me. I would become invisible to her. I would smile and nod and play the part of the defeated son-in-law. And while she celebrated her victory, I would learn everything about her. Her business, her secrets, her vulnerabilities. I would be patient, methodical. I would let her dig her own grave, one shovel of dirt at a time. And when the moment was right, I would simply step aside and let her fall in. The wedding went perfectly. I smiled through every moment. And Evelyn never suspected a thing. After the wedding, I became the perfect son-in-law. Helpful, polite, completely neutral. I laughed at Evelyn's jokes even when they weren't funny. I sent her birthday cards. I showed up early to family dinners and stayed late to help clean up. I complimented her cooking, her clothes, her opinions. I asked her advice on things I already knew the answer to. I made her feel important, needed, respected. Madeline was relieved. "I knew you two just needed time," she'd say, squeezing my hand. Evelyn started to relax around me, started to believe she'd finally broken me into the proper shape. She'd smile at me across the dinner table, satisfied. She never asked why I was suddenly so agreeable, never questioned why I'd stopped pushing back. She just accepted it as her natural victory. That was exactly what I wanted, because people only guard themselves against threats. And I was no longer a threat in her eyes. I was just there, harmless, forgettable, which meant she'd stopped watching me carefully. And that's when I started watching her. I discovered that Evelyn sat on several charity boards. She also controlled the family trust, a massive amount of money that funded everything from the house to Madeline's trust fund. So I started volunteering. Low-level stuff at first. Filing papers, organizing events, helping set up fundraisers. Work that was beneath someone like Evelyn's notice. But it put me in rooms where people talked, where assistants gossiped, where accountants muttered about paperwork that didn't quite add up. I listened. I smiled. I fetched coffee and made copies. I was so helpful, so eager, so completely non-threatening that people forgot I was even there. And that's when I heard things. Little comments about creative accounting. Jokes about moving money around. Nervous laughter about technically legal practices. Evelyn had no clue I was learning her entire operation. She thought I was just trying to fit in, trying to be useful. She'd pat my shoulder occasionally, pleased with how well I was integrating into the family's charitable work. I never corrected her assumption. I just kept filing papers and listening. One of the assistants, a young woman named Sarah, started talking to me during lunch breaks. She seemed tired, stressed. Eventually, she confided something. "Evelyn's been rerouting funds," she whispered, looking around nervously. "From the charity accounts. She's moving money through shell donations, claiming expenses that don't exist. I've seen the receipts. They don't match up." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots. Bank transfers. Forged signatures. Donation records that led to accounts Evelyn controlled personally. "I don't know what to do," Sarah said, near tears. "If I report it, she'll destroy me. She has connections everywhere." I looked at those documents carefully. Then I looked at Sarah. "Can you send me copies?" Anonymously. She hesitated, then nodded. "I'm leaving next month anyway. New job in another state. Someone should know the truth." That night, I organized everything into neat folders. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't confront Evelyn. I just waited. Because when power collapses, it makes noise. And I wanted everyone to hear. Christmas dinner that year was at Evelyn's house. The whole family gathered, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone dressed perfectly. The dining room looked like something from a holiday magazine. I brought a bottle of wine, a specific vintage Evelyn had mentioned offhand 2 years earlier during a random conversation. She looked at the bottle, and her eyebrows raised. "You remembered," she said, almost impressed. "Of course," I replied, smiling. Madeline looked at me with such warm eyes. She squeezed my hand under the table. For a moment, everything felt almost normal. But Evelyn? She looked troubled, confused. She kept glancing at me throughout dinner like she was trying to solve a puzzle. During dessert, she made a comment about keeping family close. I met her eyes and said calmly, "You're absolutely right. I am playing the long game." The table laughed, thinking it was a joke about commitment. But Evelyn's smile disappeared. She knew I meant something else. She just didn't know what yet. And that uncertainty? That was starting to eat at her. I started meeting with a lawyer Evelyn had screwed over years ago. His name was Marcus Chun, and he had every reason to help me understand how she'd built her empire. We met in coffee shops, libraries, places she'd never think to look. Marcus showed me the legal structure of the family trust, the charity boards, the shell companies. "She's smart," he admitted, "but she's gotten sloppy over the years. Too confident. She thinks she's untouchable. We didn't bend any laws. We didn't fabricate anything. We just documented truth. Every tax slip, every grant report, every expense form. Brick by brick, we build a case. Marcus smiled grimly. This is enough to get auditors interested. And once auditors start looking, they find everything. I thanked him, shook his hand. He refused payment. Just promise me you'll let me watch when it all comes down, he said. I promised. Because some victories are meant to be shared. One evening, Madeline came home looking shaken. She'd been at her mother's house, and Evelyn had been on speakerphone in another room. Madeline overheard everything. I give it 6 more months, Evelyn had said to someone. Then she'll leave him. She'll realize I was right all along. He's just not our kind of people. Madeline stood in our kitchen, tears streaming down her face. She still thinks we're going to fail. She's actually betting on it. I pulled her close, let her cry into my shoulder. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't point out that I'd been dealing with this for years. I just held her. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have believed you. You believe me now, I said quietly. That's what matters. That night, Madeline finally saw her mother clearly. And that changed everything. Because now we weren't just me against Evelyn. We were us against her. United. And that's when Evelyn's power started to crack. Digging deeper into Evelyn's past, I discovered she had a brother, Thomas. He'd been cut off from the family years ago after challenging how she'd handled their father's estate after he died. I found Thomas living quietly in Vermont, running a small bookstore. When I called, he was suspicious at first. But when I mentioned Evelyn's name, something shifted. What do you want to know? He asked. We met the following week. Thomas brought boxes of documents, letters, financial records, legal papers. She rewrote everything after Dad died, he explained bitterly. Changed the will, moved assets, cut me out completely. I tried to fight it, but she had better lawyers. He handed me a folder. These are copies of the original will. The real one. Before she altered it. I've kept them all these years, hoping someone would finally hold her accountable. I looked through the papers carefully. This wasn't just about charity fraud anymore. This was about inheritance theft, forgery, systematic deception spanning decades. Thomas smiled sadly. Make it count. I want my father's name cleared. I contacted a journalist anonymously, a reporter who specialized in nonprofit fraud. I sent her a carefully curated set of documents, just enough to make her curious. The article that ran was small, tucked in the business section. It mentioned inconsistencies in a local charity's financial reports. No names were used, just whispers. But in Evelyn's social circle, whispers are weapons. I watched as people started asking questions. Board members requesting additional audits. Donors wanting transparency. Evelyn tried to laugh it off at first. Just some confused reporter, she'd say at dinner parties. But her smile looked forced. Her hands gripped her wine glass too tightly. She started making phone calls late at night. I could hear her through the walls when we stayed over. Her voice sharp, defensive, trying to control a narrative that was starting to slip away from her. The cracks were showing. And I hadn't even really started yet. Evelyn got nervous. She hired a private investigator to dig into my background, looking for anything she could use against me. The investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find. I'd lived a clean, simple life. No scandals, no secrets, no skeletons. When the report came back empty, Evelyn cornered me during Sunday brunch. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. Any secrets I should know about, Adam? She asked casually, cutting her eggs. I sipped my coffee slowly, then looked at her. Only that you should be careful where you step, Evelyn. Not everyone is as careless as you think. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. For just a second, I saw a real fear flicker across her face. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, trying to sound light. I smiled. Just friendly advice. Family looking out for family. She didn't smile back. And for the rest of that meal, she barely touched her food. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out what I knew, what I'd found. The hunter was becoming the hunted. At a black tie charity gala, I stood near a group of major donors. Evelyn was across the room, working the crowd like she always did. I casually mentioned to the man next to me, a wealthy businessman, about interesting accounting practices I'd noticed in nonprofit work. Just loud enough for others to hear. "You'd be surprised what some boards get away with," I said, shaking my head. "Creative bookkeeping, they call it." Someone asked what I meant. I shrugged. "Oh, nothing specific. Just things I've observed." But the seed was planted. By morning, 3 major donors had quietly pulled their funding from Evelyn's main charity. No explanations given. Just sudden, cold silence. Evelyn's phone stopped ringing. The people who used to kiss her ring, who used to beg for her attention, they all suddenly became very busy, very unavailable. She tried calling in favors. Doors that had always opened for her stayed closed. And she started to realize something was very wrong. She just didn't know I was the one closing those doors. The charity board meeting started normally. Evelyn walked in confident, ready to push through her agenda like she always did. Then she saw me, sitting at the table, a voting member. Her face went white. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. The chairman smiled. Adam was brought on as a trustee last month. One of the board members who resigned recommended him. He's been doing excellent volunteer work. That board member was someone Evelyn had fired years ago, someone who jumped at the chance to help me get a seat at this table. Evelyn tried to compose herself. She pushed for a vote on a financial matter, something that would have given her more control. The vote failed. Badly. She looked around the table, confused. These people had always supported her before. Then she looked at me. I met her eyes calmly. "This is me not belonging, right?" I said quietly. "Isn't that what you told me?" She gathered her papers with shaking hands and left early. The package arrived at the IRS office on a Tuesday morning. Anonymous? Yes. But verified. Every page cross-referenced and documented. Inside were years of false filings, forged expense reports, donations that never reached their intended recipients. Money moved through fake companies and back into Evelyn's personal accounts. It wasn't just bending rules. It was systematic fraud. And I'd handed them a roadmap to follow. I didn't call anyone to gloat. Didn't tell Madeline what I'd done. I just waited. 3 weeks later, Evelyn received a letter. An official audit notice. They'd be examining her finances, her charity work, everything. She called me, voice shaking. "Did you do this?" "Do what?" I asked innocently. She couldn't prove anything. But she knew. And knowing that she'd been beaten by someone she'd dismissed as beneath her, that must have burned worse than anything else. When the federal agents came, I made sure I was there. Not by coincidence. I'd been informed of the exact time and date through Marcus, who had contacts in the system. I knocked on Evelyn's door that morning. She opened it, probably expecting her lawyer. Instead, she saw me. And behind me, 2 agents in dark suits holding badges. Her face went completely blank. No anger, no defiance. Just shock. Pure, frozen shock. The agents stepped forward. "Evelyn Hartford, we need to ask you some questions about financial irregularities in several charitable organizations." She looked at me. Really looked at me. And in that moment, she finally understood everything. Every smile I'd given her. Every time I'd been helpful. Every moment she'd thought she'd won. I leaned in slightly and whispered, "You were right. I don't belong here." But I never needed to. Then I stepped aside and let them in. The news broke the next morning. It spread through Evelyn's social circle like wildfire through dry grass. Fraud. Embezzlement. Tax evasion. The headlines were brutal, specific, damning. She lost her position on every board within 48 hours. Her social circle vanished overnight. People who'd smiled at her across dinner tables for decades suddenly couldn't remember her phone number. Her husband, Madeline's father, filed for separation, claiming he'd known nothing about the financial crimes. Whether that was true didn't matter. He was protecting himself, abandoning the sinking ship. The house went up for sale. The cars, the art, the designer clothes, everything liquidated to pay lawyers and potential restitution. And through it all, I said nothing, did nothing. I just watched as the empire she'd built on lies collapsed around her. I didn't destroy Evelyn. She destroyed herself. I just lit the match and stepped back. Madeline cried in my arms that night. Deep, shaking sobs that came from somewhere painful and old. "I can't believe my own mother could be this evil," she whispered. I stroked her hair gently. "She's not evil. She's just never been told no. She's never faced consequences. That's different. How are you so calm about this?" Madeline asked, pulling back to look at me. "Because I'm not angry anymore," I said honestly. "I stopped being angry a long time ago. I just got focused." We left town the next month. No big goodbye, no final confrontation. We just packed our things, got in the car, and drove toward something new. Madeline called her father once to say we were okay. He cried on the phone, apologized for not seeing sooner. She forgave him quietly. But Evelyn? We left her behind completely. No forwarding address. No contact information. Just silence. And somehow, that felt like the greatest victory of all. Evelyn thought I was beneath her. That marrying her daughter was some kind of lucky break, a fluke, something that would never last. She spent years trying to prove I didn't belong, that I wasn't good enough, that I'd eventually fail and disappear. But when she opened that door and saw me standing there with those federal agents behind me, she finally understood the truth. I never needed her approval. I never wanted her throne, or her money, or her social circle. I didn't want to become part of her world. I built my own world. A quiet one, a clean one, an honest one. A world where trust and hard work mattered more than last names and bank accounts. And she was never invited. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about me. If she lies awake at night in whatever small apartment she ended up in, wondering how the quiet boy from the modest town ended up being the one who took everything from her. But then I remember, I didn't take anything. She lost it all on her own. I just refused to be crushed under the weight of her arrogance. And that made all the difference.